Welcome to another episode of B2B Startup Growth. I'm Shoam Eckhouse, and in this podcast, I aim to share with you wisdom from some of the smartest B2B startup leaders and professionals that I know. We talk about all aspects of marketing, sales, growth hacking, life hacking, and everything in between. Hi, Amit.
Hello, Shoam.
How are you this morning?
Since our world changed, I'm trying to keep us sane.
That's good. Me too. I'm just checking. I was checking to see what's the date today? 7th of April. We're recording this on 7th of April, and we're recording it from Israel, which is, I think, in our something like 5th week since Corona hit us in Israel. So just to give you context of our conversation, where we stand, I'm so thankful to have you with us. Why don't you start by, in a few words, presenting Optimove so that the people that don't know the company yet have the context, and then we'll jump into the
So a good colleague of mine said, if you don't know Optimove, shame on me. Optimove is marketing technology. We help brands, B2C brands, make better communications and engagement with their customers, talking about hyper segmentation, a lot of AI, machine learning, all of those buzzwords, helping, serve the most relevant message to the most relevant customer at the most relevant time through the most relevant channel. And the idea here from a business perspective is to maximize customer lifetime value. So it's all of the different communication channels that can communicate on a one-to-one. We orchestrate those. There are many different categories we fall into. So it's CRM for B2C, it's CDP, marketing orchestration, and those types of products. We call ourselves a relationship marketing hub. So we help orchestrate all of the marketing communications towards existing customers at any given time.
Wow, sounds very, very important and helpful. So can you give us just a little bit of numbers that will help us understand the scope of your company?
So Optimove was founded in 2009, bootstrap company up until we reached a growth phase, and then we raised a round of growth equity. Currently, we're 260 employees out of London, New York, Tel Aviv, and Singapore. My team, your classic, say, B2B marketing team, we're 20 people, 20 genius marketers strong.
Wow, that's 20 geniuses is really good to have in marketing. Yep. So speaking of those, I looked at your history, and I learned that you moved into this role of VP marketing of such an incredible company like Optimove, from starting as a data analyst. Tell us a little bit about how you got to be VP marketing of Optimove.
Yeah, so my career trajectory is quite unique. Founder and CEO of my company was my professor in engineering studies. I'm an industrial engineer, and I started working at the company when we were like maybe 13 people, the entire company, as a data analyst. Since I have engineering background, so I did a lot of data querying and a lot of consultation on how to improve CRM marketing. And then at some point, when you're a small startup, you do a lot of things that aren't necessarily in your job description. So many times I touched on different areas of marketing. And at some point I was offered to head up sales. And then I said, I'm not sure that's up my alley. And then about a month after, I was offered to head up marketing. And then I said, sure, let's give it a shot.
And it was when you were really small, the company was how many at that?
Probably back then we were around 30, 35. Okay. And marketing, there wasn't no marketing department. There was an individual contractor that did like a couple days a week, maintaining the website and, writing some content. And then I came in, worked together with him, and slowly but surely grew the team, grew the business, supported our sales. And as I mentioned, today we're 20 strong.
Wow. So do you feel like you found yourself as a marketer by chance and you found your calling, or do you feel like this is just another step in a long journey that you're not sure where it will go?
If you ask my mother, she'll say that since I was born, I was a marketer. And I think that I was always a good storyteller. And generally speaking, both sides of my brain, the left analytical side and the right more creative side, are quite equally, I wouldn't say strong because, I can't say strong about myself, but, are both working. So I think that in today's world where marketers are expected to be, or marketing executives are expected to be, both analytical, but also know how to lead from a creative perspective, I have that. So I think I had what it takes to be a marketing leader. And I was just given the platform.
Okay, I also identify with the fact that you mentioned that you need both in sort of equal importance, and people who enjoy to do this both find marketing nowadays so much more rewarding, because maybe in ancient history marketers were more on the creative side, and today they need to be so much more on the analytic side, and that gives us engineers a lot of advantage here. Okay, so I'd love to jump now into the main topic that I wanted to discuss with you, which was, please share with us what's going on today. Now we're like 5 weeks into Corona. I'm sure your company has had to make a lot of adjustments. I'm sure from your perspective as leading marketing, even more needed to make adjustments. Could you maybe point out the top most significant adjustments that you needed to make right now?
So as a business, we work with various business verticals, some of which include gaming, which in these times are growing part of their product. So sports betting obviously is almost dying these days, but they also have creative ways to communicate with their customers. And then poker is booming and casino games are booming. And then we also work with the travel industry, which we all know how this crisis impacted them. We work a lot with retail, and retail was impacted by this in a wide variety of ways. So there are different subverticals like skincare, for example, which are exploding.
Really?
Yep, then you have fashion retail, especially like the high-end fashion or luxury fashion that's, suffering some significant declines. So I think that, most businesses...
Pajamas are going up?
Pajamas are going up, yes. Pajamas, sportswear, a lot of running shoes and stuff. And, those are definitely going up. I think that, there is no business out there today that wasn't impacted to a certain extent by the outbreak of the virus. So obviously it impacted the business. We're seeing that part of our clients, so we're a SaaS business, right? So usually we have contracts of 24 months and more of that. Answering this as an executive in the company, what we decided from a strategic standpoint is to reach out proactively to all of our customers and, feel the waters. How is this impacting you? How can we help? So proactively, there are a few industries that we know that were significantly and severely impacted by the outbreak. So we did stuff as freezing invoices or, making it easier on payment terms and so on and so forth. So that's from the entire way that the company goes about it. We are continuing doing business. There is business continuity. Our R&D are continuing to develop our product. Our customer success teams are continuing to support our clients, operations. Everything's still working. And that is a good segue to how we adapted or adjusted in marketing.
Wait a second. Can I maybe ask you more specifically? You said first thing you did was reach out to your clients to test the water, right? See how they're doing and what they're going through to give you ability to assess next steps. Could you share with us in what way did you do it? Did you put a lot of thought and effort and planning of how you do this reach out, or was it just go pick up the phone to the CEO of each company, or to what is the persona you're selling to?
Marketing.
So you just picked up the phone and called each of them and had a discussion, or was it in another way?
So it was as the latter, more sporadic. Obviously, we made lists of companies that we thought that are more vulnerable in such times, and that's how we prioritize. But end of the day, we reached out to all of our customers. Yeah, reaching out, using our customer success teams, our account executives, our regional GMs, reaching out to the accounts, touching base. I think that in these times, it's super important to be thoughtful and to be sensitive and, we're all going through this, right? There is no individual or business or that aren't impacted by this. So you just need to be empathetic and, speak with people and hear what they say and be flexible to adjust accordingly.
Right. Okay, so you tested the water, you realized what's the picture, which of your customers are suffering more, less, maybe some are growing. Now what?
So then that's a good segue to what we did on the revenue side of the business. So myself and the GMs who lead the sales in our different regions had a call to understand how will this impact prospective business. So existing business we took care of in that sense and mapped everything out. And then what do you do from a new business perspective? We're an enterprise software. Our pricing isn't, we're not a commodity. It's not a cheap solution. And then that led us to probably if people aren't in an existing sales cycle, it won't be the best times, especially for industries that are heavily impacted, to start new processes. Yes, there are industries that at these times are very open for these conversations, right? Think about all of the e-learning platforms out there that are booming and other industries that are in a way, and it's there is no politically correct way to see this, are positively impacted by the situation. So they are still open. So let's distinguish between those companies that are open for sales pitches and marketing communications and the ones that are that are probably not gonna start a new conversation about deploying an enterprise software in these times. So for the ones that aren't impacted or positively impacted, we pretty much continued what we do usually: ABM activity, account-based marketing. We have the BDRs reaching out, and that pretty much, we might have adjusted part of the communications to be more sensitive to time and stress, the business case in such times. But the vast majority of things that we did remain the same. Then from the other industries that have suffered a negative impact from what's happening, so what we did is we put the main focus on pipeline acceleration and not on lead generation, right? Because the understanding is that if you're not in active conversations with us, if you're not in an active sales cycle with us, this probably won't be the time that you'll start it. So let's focus on people that are already in processes with us, because what we hear many times when we speak with our prospects is that these are good times to complete long-term processes, right? To start doing things that you wanted to do, but the day-to-day type of engagements didn't let you do them. So we are putting a lot of investment in existing pipeline in order to accelerate it, to make the most out of it. So that's from a strategic standpoint.
But wouldn't it make sense also at this time? I understand and totally agree with the fact that it's a lot more difficult to close deals with people who just came into your funnel. But wouldn't it make sense also at this time to collect more leads, and to be minded that those will close later as this crisis resolves? But at least now people are consuming a lot of education. So maybe it is an opportunity to fill up the top of the funnel as well, just not try to close them at the moment, because it's not easy to do that now.
So the way that I look at new lead acquisition or customer acquisition, so to speak, is proactive and reactive, right? Proactive is usually all of the ABM, have your accounts, reach out to them and bombard them. Reactive is being there when they're looking for you. So that's a lot of SEO and, paid search and all of those things. So on that end, we didn't stop anything. We're continuing or even doubling down on our content, and not because of it supporting lead generation, more so of it, being there for our community, right? So one of the actions that we've taken amid the current situation is we transitioned our content operation into a newsroom, right? Mm-hmm. So we had the relevant talent, and on a daily basis, we'd publish a blog a week. We'd publish 5 articles on our publication post funnel. We'd release, monthly long form content, an ebook or a white paper or whatnot, the usual stuff. But then I think that these times you need to be much more responsive. And if you have the capacity and the right people and the right talent to do it, then go for it. So what we're doing now is we transition into a newsroom. We publish, I think, around 3 or 4 blogs a week. We publish around 10 post funnel articles, part of them news, part of them opinion op-eds. So we ramped up our publishing cadence, as well as going on a daily live stream of a recap or of a daily dose of what's going on in marketing in B2C. Now, the reason that we did that is that everyone's doing content today, right?
Right.
It's not as pricey, and you're everyone's an opinion leader and has amazing advice. So from our perspective, we're in a place where we can curate that news, surface the relevant opinions, insights, news, and deliver them to our community, which consists of prospective clients, existing clients, and so on and so forth. So providing them with that daily digest, making sense. It's like, I think it's a human, us as humans, when these crises come upon us, we look to gather as much information as possible. The thing is that it could be cumbersome, right? There's a proliferation of news and content. So the idea is to curate and, be that go-to place for marketers out there that want to have that daily digest, want to have that type of feed of what they need to read. And if they read that, they're well knowledgeable and are able to, make knowledgeable decisions or so on and so forth.
So wait a minute. You mentioned nowadays it's not as expensive to generate the content. And I wanted to understand in what sense do you mean that?
So I might have mistaken, but I didn't say nowadays it's not expensive. I say nowadays people invest in content since it's rather something that most B2B marketing teams know how to do. It's something that, usually generates a lot of organic value and not paid value, or you don't need to invest a lot of marketing budgets in promoting perhaps content.
That might be cheaper, but could you share with me, please, how you are managed? Because it's every marketer's dream to be able to ramp up the amount and the quality of the content that you generate and make it like a newsroom and daily and very reactive and very responsive. This is good practice for always, right? So now that this crisis hit your company, and I'm sure you guys are trying to be, leaner, meaner, and, more effective. How did you manage all of a sudden to ramp up this effort? Because it requires more work and more effort on the marketer's side. So how did you go about it?
So I think in these times, everyone gives, if on a regular basis, they'd give an extra mile, these times they give an extra 5. But whomever is familiar with the marketing at Optimove, from the get-go, we were very, very strong in content marketing to the extent that at some point we started our own publication, right? So Post Funnel is a publication that we started, I think it was 2018, where the idea is to own the content and the voice in our market, in our addressable market. We were always good at doing content. Now, running this publication, we have a always existing bank of external writers. We have writing content in-house, and we have all of the company is part of the content operation here. So think about it, end of the day, our writers know how to write well, they know how to research well, but ideation usually is very tough to bring from these people that their profession is writing, but not necessarily doing CRM marketing or all of that stuff. So we have many people across the entire organization that are very dedicated to content ideation. So think about people on our professional services team. They would see a data trend. They would hear back from their customers. And obviously at these times, their interactions with customers are even more rapid than on a daily basis. So they have more ideas. Those ideas trickle down to the content team, and they're able to generate content. Now, I would say that the nature of the content that we publish these days isn't what we publish in regular times. It's more timely content. Sometimes it's shorter. It's very to the point, no fluff and making the point. It's boom, quick, there. That's exactly the idea of transitioning into a newsroom versus into an editorial content, marketing team.
Wouldn't you agree that this is good practice always? To be shorter, more to the point, less fluff, more sensitive, all the things you said, isn't it good to forever?
I think it's all about striking a balance. I think that on in routine times or non-war times, people have more, their attention span might be longer, even though people are at home and they consume a lot of content. But if you think about it, usually, or the way we see it, they consume more nugget-sized content, and they want to have it more direct. Their attention span is shorter. That's at least what we see from speaking with our readers and interviewing them and so on and so forth. But again, it's all about striking a balance. So yes, people that do content marketing and have it all fluff and nothing to the point, obviously that's not going to work. And on the other hand, if you have 150 word blog posts, that could be justified in times of war, so to speak. But on a day-to-day basis, you want to position things in a more, I'd say, less urgent matter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also maybe more detailed, because when you give more details, people sometimes learn more from it.
Exactly. And you can look at it, if you compare say, I don't know, a CNN news website versus your Inc. website, right? Which is more thoughts, opinions, research versus a CNN that has, news. News is coming in. Okay, we found a huge drop in yada yada. This is what we suggest retail marketers to do these times, and according to what we're seeing in data. So it's being more, I'd say, adaptive to the situation, more responsive, and publishing in a higher cadence.
Cool. So speaking of detail, because I think you mentioned, okay, so we're doing for the verticals that are relatively at health, you're doing your usual thing, okay? I'd love if you could expand a little bit about your usual thing. Could you maybe give an example of one of the typical or most successful customer journeys that you see as a main deal generator for your company, and how it works all the way from start to end? What does that journey look like? Who is the client and how do they find you and how do you convert them? Could you describe like one of your journeys?
Do you have 3, 4, or 5 days to speak about this?
So not all the details, just to give us the highlights.
So from a bird's eye view, from a lead generation perspective and lead nurturing perspective, we heavily are into ABM, account-based marketing. So we have our list of accounts, our total addressable market. We break those down into 4 stages, funnels, so to speak: unaware, aware, engaged, and opportunity. I won't get into the details of how each one are. It's quite self-explanatory, but the details on how each one is defined is over scope. So, and in that, we divide into 6 different personas, which represent our buyer committee. So we have the marketing manager, who usually is the user. Then we have the marketing executive, who usually is the budget owner. Then we have finance, we have IT, and so on and so forth. So we don't speak with all of them or communicate with all of them at all of the funnel stages. So each funnel stage, we communicate with a different or several different personas, and we have content for them. For example, one of many. So when they're unaware and they're the user persona, we want to expose them to the problem. They might not even know that they have that problem. So the content usually exposes them to the problem. Then when they become aware, we speak about how their life would look like if they solve the problem. And then when they're engaged, we speak about how we do it. So we don't speak about how Optimove even does what it does before they're in some sort of engagement with us. So
how many touches typically do you have with a certain account until it closes? With all the contacts, do you have
hundreds?
hundreds?
Because think about
Okay.
hundreds. Because think about it, when they become engaged, then they have calls with BDRs, with salespeople, with a lot of touch points. And on digital, they have
On digital, I'm wondering on the digital touch points before they start talking to your sales team.
thousands of impressions.
Wow. Okay, that is very important for some of the audience listening to this. I am assuming are part of these marketers that often I meet. They come to us and they want us to help them build a funnel. Okay, and so we plan out a whole set of tactics and strategies, and we put together a funnel. And they see after a couple of weeks, they see a bunch of leads coming in, and they are often disappointed that after they clicked on whatever, They're not yet setting up a requested demo or something. And often it takes a lot of time to educate marketers that are newer in this B2B field to understand how many touch points digitally you actually need in order to effectively bring people down the funnel. So the fact that you're saying that at hundreds, it's really interesting. Could you explain time-wise, how long is your typical sales cycle from top to bottom?
Exactly. So I would give a disclaimer here saying that it very much depends on the product that you're selling. So
Right.
for example, on Monday.com, it's much shorter, much higher frequency versus high touch sell process. So for us, the sell cycle is on average 5 months.
Right.
And the deal size accordingly is very high. So
we're talking about deal sizes of what range between what and what annual?
let's say 6 digits and onwards.
Okay. So these are large enterprise SaaS products, and that's why their sales cycle is long, and they require also a buying unit in the company that consists of a few people, typically more than 3, right?
Right. And there's also an education or learning curve here because, yes, everyone understands that they need to invest in their existing customers, but there are a variety of ways. And the space that we're in is very buzzy. So, for example, we're also in the space of CDP, customer data platform. And there is a wide variety of vendors in this space that can also be subcategorized into a few slots. And so there's a lot of education work that needs to be done. Also, I think that if you're investing in ABM, you need to understand that it's a long-term play, especially if you're selling to enterprise. You want to be there when the RFP is out and you want to be there to help write that RFP. You don't know when it's going to happen. So yes, there are many platforms out there to show buyer intent, Bombora and others. But end of the day, you want to start creating a relationship and want to start, generating awareness with your addressable market, even before or ideally before they're in the market, so that when they're in the market, they already know you and you're the first name on their shortlist.
Right.
So it's definitely a long-term play.
Very long term. Okay. So you shared with me some of your thoughts and what you're doing right now in reaction to Corona days. Could you share maybe a few thoughts of what would you think might be the longer term impact of this ordeal and how it would influence the way you're planning your a little bit further future for the company?
So I think this is definitely a quote unquote off scar. It's going to be a scar in humanity. I mean, nothing will be the same. How different things will be and in which angles, I think that, I'm not a prophet. I can just use the information that I have in order to make let's say an educated guess on how things.
Yeah, I'm not asking a guess, just your thoughts of scenarios that you're trying to prepare for.
So I think it'll take a long time to revive from this, right? Even think about it about myself as an individual. I don't press the button on the elevator. I regularly use my elbow for everything. When's that going to go away, right? So people are adjusting new habits amid this current situation, and it'll take time for them to let those go. So if I'm thinking about it as a marketing leader, so I would say that, people won't be ready to buy so quickly. They would need to understand how this, from a macro perspective, impacted their business, their customers, and only then when they'll do that type of summarize impact of things, only then they will be starting to replan. And we're talking about something that will take months, right? So as marketers, we plan, let's have our annual plans and then our quarterly plans. So things that I planned January 2020 are irrelevant at this point. Now, when will I start to not be as responsive and move as things progress is when this will be behind us. And then I'll rethink all of the initiatives. Yes, things that I have started, I will continue progressing. But things that I haven't started, I have paused at this time. I think that, re-strategizing or rethinking strategy will happen after this ends. On the other hand, I think that these times are very good times for soul searching. So you have some time to think about it and focus on what you're good at and double down on your strengths, just like we did with content, right? We're strong with content. We double down. Now we understand we have the ability to be a newsroom. Now, as you mentioned, this might be something that is good also for peace times, but we'll need to think that. But we understand that we're good at content. We have that muscle that works very, very well. And in peace times, we need to see how things won't be the same. Our content operation won't go back to what it has been. Not sure it's going to remain as a newsroom, but things will change. Likewise, other areas of marketing and the business in general. So I think that to sum that up, I think that things will change forever. I think that people would focus on their core competency and areas that they're strong at. And it'll take time until the economy will be back to what it has been. Buyers having the budgets and starting to have buying processes and sales cycles being what they've been. It'll take time.
So it's interesting that you said the soul searching and you described how you want to double down on the strength of your team and your company. And I love that. And that I think that's really a good advice to everybody to focus on that. Do you also take that to the personal level and try to maybe soul search and say, okay, for me as a person, what would be the things I need to be more focused around as a person, as a manager? Has your personal management style adapted lately because of this Corona time? Do you think it's going to change the way you function as a person and as a manager?
So as a person, definitely, both as a person, as an individual, and as a manager, professionally and personally, I think that I don't think that my managing style changed. I do think that we have adapted a few processes to accommodate to this current situation. So part of them will probably remain even afterwards. I do think that in these times, as managers, as human beings in general, we need to be more sensitive, more thoughtful. And I think that, I'd like to look at myself as a sensitive, thoughtful person, but even more so now. And I think that what I learned from this is the importance of it. And when I mentioned earlier that these times, my team doesn't only take the extra mile as they would on an everyday basis, they do the extra 10 miles. Yes. And I think that, it's just because we're all in it and that we're both very sensitive to each other and understand the limitations of working from home and of working with children all over you and of, not going outside of your house for a few good weeks. So I think that sensitivity is key. And I think that these days just taught me how important it is to be, thoughtful and sensitive. I always have been, or want to think that I have been, but just taught me how important it is.
I want to make my personal angle on it is that I hope I was always a sensitive manager to my team. But I think nowadays I allow myself to be a lot more involved in what's going on with them personally, because I feel like I'm so appreciative of the fact that people have overcome such challenges at home and still are productive and working and giving the extra 5 miles, that I find it makes more sense to me to start every conversation with my team by just first really learning personally how they're doing. And I don't think I would have done this before. Before we were, the conversations were a lot more formal and professional. And I set the goals. This is what you need to do. And you do it whatever way you want to, whatever way you find useful and effective, go ahead. But nowadays it's more, tell me how you're doing with your kids and how you're managing your home and how are you managing your life and your breathing and your groceries. So I think in that sense, I hope it will change us to for the better, and that part maybe should stay. I don't know.
I'm sure it will. I mean, as individuals, we should all always thrive to evolve and release new versions of ourselves. And I think that this type of huge happening or crisis or God knows how to define this will definitely, force us to release new and hopefully better versions of ourselves.
Hopefully. That's a really good closing remark. I love that, because we're very near our closing time for the episode. So Amit, before I say thank you so much, let me just allow you to, as a closing comment, maybe tell us, what do you wish or think that we would be talking about, say, April 2021? Hopefully all this will be behind us. What do you think our conversation will then be about?
Well, it's a big question. I want to say about Kanye West, but I think that from a professional perspective, I think that we'll all hopefully at that point look back and say we learned a lot, we adjusted a lot, and we're already, back to normal in terms of business, in terms of growth, leaner and meaner, and better at what we do.
Maybe leaner and kinder rather than meaner.
Leaner and meaner from a business perspective, from a personal perspective, for sure, kinder.
Okay, let's go for that. I'm all for that. So, Amit, thank you so much. I'll include in the show notes, hopefully, as many useful things that you mentioned as possible. Where can people find you online?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
All of us.
Great. So I'll link that in the notes too. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Sham. Thank you.
Maybe after Corona.
Hopefully it's going to not take too long.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You've been listening to the B2B Startup Growth Podcast, bringing you the latest wisdom on marketing, sales, growth hacking, and life as a startup leader. I'm your host, Shoham Eckhaus, and if there's a particular topic that you'd like me to cover soon, please reach out to me on b2bstartupgrowth.com and let me know.